The call came on a Thursday morning while I was reviewing the quarterly reports for my agricultural and luxury goods empire. Chen from Platinum Events sounded deeply uncomfortable as she delivered the message that would permanently alter my relationship with my family. Ms. Rodriguez, I'm calling about your sister Isabella's engagement party this Saturday. Your family has requested that we remove you from the guest list, but they still expect your $45,000 payment to remain in place. I paused, setting down the financial statements showing record profits from my vineyard operations. Through my office windows I could see the rolling hills of Napa Valley where my properties stretched across 3,000 acres. Land my family had no idea I owned. Remove me from the guest list? What reason did they give? Diana's voice became strained. They mentioned wanting to maintain a certain caliber of guest. Your brother-in-law-to-be has some very important business connections attending, and they felt your presence might not align with the image they're trying to project. The irony was staggering. For the past 8 years, my family had treated me like the black sheep, the daughter who'd thrown away her education to play around with plants and jewelry. They had no idea that my plant hobby had evolved into Verde Vista Holdings, a $2.7 billion empire encompassing luxury vineyards, high-end jewelry stores, and the largest greenhouse operation on the West Coast. I see. And they expect me to fund a party I'm not sophisticated enough to attend. It appears so, yes. Your mother specifically mentioned that Isabella has been planning this engagement for months, and they don't want to disappoint her by reducing the celebration's scale. Isabella, my younger sister, the golden child who'd followed every path my parents had laid out for her. MBA from Stanford, corporate consulting career, engagement to a hedge fund manager. She was everything they'd wanted me to be, while I'd chosen dirt under my fingernails and the unpredictable world of agriculture and retail. Diana, I need you to cancel the entire event. I'm sorry, what? But ma'am, it's your sister's engagement celebration. I can't just. Yes, you can. Because the party is being held at Sunset Ridge Vineyard, which I own. The floral arrangements are coming from Verde Vista greenhouses, also mine. And the engagement ring your bride is wearing? That came from Celestial Jewelry, one of my 12 luxury stores. The silence stretched for nearly 20 seconds. Ms. Rodriguez, I don't understand. The contracts show different vendor names. All subsidiaries of Verde Vista Holdings. I'll have my legal team send over the ownership documentation within 30 minutes. Consider this official notice that all services are being withdrawn immediately. After hanging up, I sat in my office overlooking the vineyard that had started my empire. 8 years ago, I'd used my college fund to purchase 20 acres of struggling grapevines, much to my family's horror. They'd wanted me to use that money for graduate school, to follow Isabella into the corporate world where real success happened. What they never understood was that I hadn't failed at their version of success. I'd simply discovered that building something from the soil up was more fulfilling than climbing someone else's corporate ladder. Every dollar I'd made from that first harvest had been reinvested. More land, better equipment, expanded operations. Then I'd diversified into greenhouse operations, supplying high-end restaurants and luxury hotels. The jewelry stores had come later, when I'd learned that wealthy vineyard visitors wanted exclusive pieces to commemorate their experiences. But to them I was still just Carmen, the disappointment who'd chosen manual labor over a corner office. My phone buzzed. Isabella's name appeared on the screen. Carmen, what did you do? Diana just called crying, saying the engagement party is cancelled. Good afternoon to you too, Bella. Don't Bella me. She claims you own the vineyard and the florist and somehow the jewelry store where Marcus bought my ring. That's impossible. It's completely possible. I own all of them. You're lying. You grow vegetables in a greenhouse. I own 47 greenhouse facilities across California, Oregon, and Washington. I also own 3 vineyards, 12 jewelry stores, and the largest organic produce distribution network on the West Coast. I could hear her breathing heavily on the other end of the line. Even if that's true, you can't cancel my engagement party. I can, and I did. You decided I wasn't good enough to attend, but my money was good enough to pay for it. That's not how this works anymore. Carmen, be reasonable. Marcus's boss will be there along with partners from his firm. This party is important for his career. Then maybe you should have considered that before deciding I would embarrass you in front of his colleagues. We never said you'd embarrass us. What exactly did you say, Bella? The silence told me she knew she'd been caught. We thought it might be better to keep things more professional. You know how you get around fancy people. How do I get around fancy people? You always talk about plants and dirt, and it's not the kind of conversation that impresses investment bankers. There was the real reason. I talked about things I was passionate about instead of making small talk about stock portfolios and market trends. I see. So my $45,000 was professional enough, but my conversation topics weren't. It's not about the money. It's entirely about the money, Bella. You wanted my financial contribution without my actual presence. That makes me a donor, not a sister. I hung up and immediately called my assistant. Please prepare a comprehensive portfolio of Verde Vista holdings for delivery to my family. Include the jewelry store receipts showing Isabella's engagement ring purchase. Within an hour my phone was ringing nonstop. First Isabella again, then my mother, then my father, then Marcus. The hedge fund prince who'd never bothered to learn my name properly, always calling me Isabella's sister when we met. I let them all go to voicemail while I walked through my vineyard, checking on the late-season grapes that would become next year's premium vintage. Isabella's second message was panicked. Carmen, I saw the documents. I don't understand how this is possible, but we need to fix this. The party is in 2 days. My mother's message was classic manipulation. Carmen, darling, Isabella showed me some very impressive business papers. We had no idea you'd done so well with your little garden business. But surely family comes first. Your sister needs this party for her future happiness. My father's message was more direct. Carmen, this is your father. I've reviewed the documentation Isabella provided. We need to have a family meeting immediately. There are clearly things we need to discuss. Marcus's message was what I expected. Carmen, this is Marcus, Isabella's fiancé. I think there's been a misunderstanding about the engagement party. As someone in finance, I'd be very interested in learning more about your business operations. Perhaps we can find a solution that works for everyone. Now he was interested in my business operations. Convenient timing. I waited until evening to return any calls, starting with my parents. They were at Isabella's apartment, no doubt planning damage control. Carmen. My mother's voice was artificially bright. We've been trying to reach you all day. I know, Mom. I've been working. Honey, Isabella showed us the most amazing business documents. We had no idea you'd grown your greenhouse hobby into something so substantial. Even in her attempt to acknowledge my success, she couldn't help but call it a greenhouse hobby that had grown up. Is that what you want to discuss? My father took the phone. Carmen, we owe you an apology. We didn't realize the scope of what you've built. But family is family, and we need to resolve this situation with Isabella's party. There's nothing to resolve, Dad. Isabella made her priorities clear. She made a mistake. The stress of wedding planning, you understand. She wants you at the party. Does she? Or does she want me there now that she knows I'm wealthy enough to deserve an invitation? Carmen, that's not fair. Isn't it? 6 months ago, you suggested I consider getting a real job, with benefits instead of playing in the dirt. You were embarrassed when people asked what I did for work. The truth hung between us because we all remembered those conversations. People change, sweetheart. We can do better. I hope so. But change requires acknowledging what went wrong. You all spent years being ashamed of my career choice while I was building something that makes Marcus's hedge fund look like a lemonade stand. My mother took the phone back. We were never ashamed. Mom, you literally introduced me to people as your daughter, who's trying to make farming work, while introducing Isabella as our successful business consultant. The difference in pride was obvious. We love you, Carmen. We've always been proud of your independence. My independence. Not my success, not my business acumen, not my ability to build something from nothing. My independence. Like I was a stubborn child who'd finally learned to tie her own shoes. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. And it's fine, Mom. I understand now where I stand in this family. So what happens now? My father asked quietly. Now Isabella and Marcus find a new venue, new flowers, and a new jeweler to resize her ring since it came from one of my stores. Carmen, please. Think about your sister's happiness. I am thinking about it. I'm thinking about how happy she'll be not having to worry about my embarrassing conversation topics at her fancy party. After hanging up, I made a decision that would change our family dynamics forever. I called my head of security and had him compile a detailed report of every financial interaction I'd had with my family over the past 5 years. The results were illuminating. I'd been quietly supporting their lifestyle without them realizing it. Isabella's apartment was in a building I owned. I'd been giving her below-market rent through a property management company. My parents' anniversary trip to France had been booked through my travel connections at cost. Their Lucky Wine Club membership that delivered premium bottles monthly? Those came from my vineyard at wholesale prices. Even Marcus had benefited. His hedge fund's biggest client was a pension fund that invested heavily in agricultural holdings. My agricultural holdings. I'd been indirectly contributing to his commission checks for 2 years. I'd been the invisible hand making their successful lives more affordable while they looked down on me for choosing dirt over dividends. But I also did something else. I called the most exclusive event planning company in San Francisco and arranged for a surprise engagement celebration for Isabella and Marcus. Not at my vineyard but at my private estate in Sonoma, a property they didn't know existed. Then I contacted their actual friends, the people who'd known Isabella since college, and invited them to celebrate her engagement properly. If my family wanted to exclude me from their networking event masquerading as a celebration, fine. But I was still going to honor my sister's engagement the way it deserved to be honored. Saturday morning arrived with perfect California sunshine. I was in my greenhouse, checking on the rare orchids I cultivated for high-end hotels, when my security system alerted me to visitors at the estate gate. Through the camera I saw my father's Mercedes with my entire family inside. I'd never invited them to the Sonoma property. They'd never known it existed. The estate was something I'd purchased 2 years ago when I wanted a more private space away from the commercial vineyard operations. "How did you find me?" I asked through the intercom. "We hired a private investigator," Isabella said, her voice tight with stress. "Carmen, we need to talk." I buzzed them through, curious about what their investigation had revealed. They drove slowly up the winding driveway, past the guest cottages and sculpture garden, until they reached the main house. Through my office window I watched them sit in the car for several minutes, taking in the scope of the property. When they finally approached the front door, my mother was crying. "Carmen, this place is incredible." "Thank you. Would you like to come in?" They followed me through the foyer with its soaring ceilings and living walls of plants, past the great room with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the valley, to the kitchen that opened onto the infinity pool terrace. "The view is breathtaking," Isabella whispered. I bought the property for the privacy and the growing conditions. The house was a bonus. Marcus was studying the wine collection displayed along one wall. Bottles from my vineyard, many of them vintage years worth thousands of dollars each. "Carmen, this wine collection alone must be worth more than your annual salary, yes." My father was examining the custom cabinetry made from reclaimed wood from my original vineyard. "Sweetheart, this must have cost millions. I own it outright. No mortgage, no business loans. Everything you see was purchased with profits from my greenhouse hobby." Isabella sank into one of the kitchen island stools. "Why didn't you ever tell us about any of this?" "Because I wanted you to be proud of me for following my passion and building something meaningful, not impressed by my bank account. I wanted you to invite me to your engagement party because I'm your sister, not because I can afford to pay for it." "But we are proud of you," she protested. "Really? When was the last time any of you asked about my business without suggesting I should consider a more traditional career?" None of them could answer. Marcus stepped forward. "Carmen, I owe you an apology. I've been dismissive of your work because I didn't understand the scale of what you've built. From a business perspective, what you've accomplished is remarkable." "From a business perspective?" "What I mean is, as someone who works with agricultural investments, I should have recognized the potential in what you were doing. Marcus, you've never once asked what I was doing. You assumed it was small scale because it involved plants." Isabella stood up, tears streaming down her face. "Carmen, I'm so sorry. We were horrible to you. I was horrible to you. You were thoughtless. There's a difference. I don't want a party without you. I never did. I was just scared that Marcus's colleagues would judge our family if they thought we weren't successful enough." "And you thought I made the family look unsuccessful?" "I thought your work was small and local and I was intimidated by Marcus's world. I wanted everything to look perfect." I looked at my sister, really looked at her. She was still the little girl who'd followed me around the garden when we were children, asking questions about every plant and flower. Bella, what makes you happy? Not what impresses Marcus's colleagues, but what actually brings you joy. She thought for a moment. Working with plants, actually. I loved helping you in the garden when we were kids. I've always missed that connection to growing things. Then why did you choose consulting? Because it was what Mom and Dad expected. Because it seemed more impressive than getting dirt under my fingernails. What if impressive isn't the goal? What if the goal is building a life that fulfills you? Is that what you did? Every day. Even when it was scary, even when you all thought I was making a mistake. My mother joined the conversation. Carmen, we want to understand what drives you. We want to support your dreams, not dismiss them. Even when those dreams don't match your expectations? Especially then, my father said firmly. We've learned that our expectations were too narrow. My phone chimed with a text from my event coordinator. Private engagement celebration ready at Estate Gardens. Guests arriving at 4 p.m. Actually, I said, there's something you should know. I've planned a different kind of engagement celebration for Isabella and Marcus. What do you mean? Isabella asked. Your real friends. The people who love you for who you are, not your professional connections, will be arriving here in a few hours for an intimate engagement party. I've arranged for your college roommate to fly in from Boston, your theater friends from Stanford, and Marcus, I contacted your college buddy who runs that nonprofit you've mentioned. You did all this? Isabella's voice was thick with emotion. You deserve to be celebrated. But by people who love you, not by those you're trying to impress for business reasons. Marcus looked uncomfortable. Carmen, I should explain about my colleagues. You don't need to explain anything to me, Marcus. But you might want to think about whether building a marriage on impressing other people is the foundation you want. Isabella started crying again. Carmen, can you forgive me? I was so wrong about everything. I can forgive you. But things have to change. I won't be treated like the embarrassing family member who's only valuable for her checkbook. They will change, Isabella promised. I want to know about your businesses, your passion for growing things, everything. I want to understand why you chose this path and what drives you. And I want to learn from you, Marcus added quietly. About building something sustainable, about following your vision even when others doubt you. That afternoon, I watched Isabella and Marcus celebrate their engagement in my garden overlooking the Sonoma Valley. 30 of their closest friends had come, people who'd known them for years and cared about their happiness, not their professional networks. Isabella gave a toast that surprised me. To everyone who came to celebrate with us today, thank you for loving us for who we are. And to my sister Carmen, who taught me today that success isn't measured by other people's expectations, but by staying true to your own vision and building something that matters. Later, as the sun set over the vineyard, Isabella found me by the infinity pool. I have something to ask you. What's that? Would you consider letting me work with you? I know I'd have to start at the bottom and learn everything, but I want to get back to what I loved as a kid. I want to work with plants again. What about your consulting career? What about it? I've been miserable for 3 years trying to be someone I'm not. Watching you today, seeing what you've built by following your passion, I want that kind of fulfillment. It's hard work, Bella. Long hours, dirty hands, failed crops, difficult seasons. I know. But it's real work, building something that matters. I want to learn from you. What does Marcus think about this? She glanced over at her fiancé, who was deep in conversation with my vineyard manager about sustainable farming practices. He's more interested in what I do now than he ever was when I was trying to impress his colleagues. 6 months later, I was walking through the greenhouse with Isabella, teaching her about soil composition and nutrient balance. She'd given notice at her consulting firm and started working for Verde Vista as an agricultural apprentice. Her hands were dirty, her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she was genuinely happy for the first time in years. The tomatoes in Section C are ready for harvest, she reported, consulting her tablet. And the new orchid hybrid is showing promising growth patterns. Excellent. What about the wedding plans? We've decided on a small ceremony here at the vineyard. Just family and close friends. No business networking disguised as a celebration. That sounds perfect. Carmen, I need to thank you again for canceling that engagement party. It was the wake-up call I needed to figure out what really mattered to me. And what's that? Family. Real relationships. Building something meaningful instead of just chasing other people's approval. That evening, I had dinner with my parents at the main house. Something that had become a weekly tradition since the engagement party incident. My mother was showing me photos from Isabella's latest greenhouse project while my father grilled vegetables from our organic gardens. "She looks so happy," my mother said. "She's happy. She's finally doing what she loves." "Like you always have," my father added, joining us at the table. "It wasn't always easy being the family disappointment." "You were never a disappointment, Carmen. We were just too narrow-minded to see the bigger picture. And too proud to admit when we were wrong," my mother added. Marcus arrived with wine from my vineyard, another new tradition. He'd become genuinely interested in sustainable agriculture and was considering shifting his investment focus to green technologies. "Carmen, I've been thinking about what you said about building something meaningful versus just making money. And I want to start an investment fund focused on sustainable agriculture and environmental technology. Would you consider being a founding partner? Only if you understand that this isn't about making quick profits. It's about building systems that will sustain communities for generations." "That's exactly what I want to be part of." As I watched my family gathered around the dinner table, sharing stories about their days and planning future projects together, I realized that canceling the engagement party had been the best decision I could have made. Not because it punished them, but because it forced all of us to confront what really mattered. Now, instead of being the family embarrassment who secretly funded everyone's lifestyle, I was simply Carmen, successful businesswoman, devoted sister and daughter, and the person they came to when they wanted to learn about building something that would last. And that, I thought as Isabella showed me her sketches for expanding the orchid program, was worth every uncomfortable conversation it had taken to get here. The following weekend, as I stood in my vineyard watching Isabella and Marcus exchange vows surrounded by the plants and flowers that had brought our family back together, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Not because I'd proven my worth to my family, but because we'd finally learned to love each other without conditions. That, more than any business success, was the real harvest.